Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Living Life Naturally. And today I have with me Dr. Renee Wellenstein, and she is actually a double board certified doctor who's been working with women for over 20 years. And due to her own personal health challenges, she stepped outside the box of conventional medicine to take a radically different approach to heal herself from the deep depths of burnout. So about a decade ago, Dr. Renee was living what she thought was her dream life. She was extremely busy as an OB/GYN, married to a doctor with toddler twins, and had moved to a quaint, quiet town in the country. One day in May 2012, Dr. Renee fell off a horse during a riding lesson and broke her neck. My gosh, that's huge. So she not only struggled with severe back pain, but with fatigue and the inability to focus. And her doctor diagnosed her with depression, but her symptoms didn't improve after trying 2 different antidepressants. So 2 years after her injury, Dr. Renee was still struggling with unexplained symptoms, and after exhausting all of her options in the conventional healthcare system, she was put in contact with a doctor who was an anti-aging practitioner, and she finally received the appropriate diagnosis. Her symptoms were resolved, she got back on her feet and joined the world of functional medicine. So in August of 2019, Dr. Renee started Caspera Elite Health Consulting, LLC. And throughout her journey, she has certainly faced her fair share of obstacles, but has mastered the art of leaping into transitions with each pivot. So now Dr. Renee empowers women to take control of their health, jumpstart their energy, improve their confidence, and here's the big one for today, reignite their libido. So welcome to the podcast, Dr. Renee.
Well, thank you for having me. And I broke my back, not my neck. So I'm thankful it was my back and not my neck, but the neck is part of the back. So, but yeah, that definitely was the starting point for where I am today. So.
Right. That's huge.
Yeah. So thank you for having me.
And where are you joining us from today?
I'm joining you from Central New York in the US.
And is that where you're from originally?
It is. So this is the country I was talking about. Yep. I moved back up here approximately 13 and a half years ago to raise my now 14-year-old twins.
Wow. Wow. It was bad enough having 22 months apart. So I can't imagine running around with twins.
It was very interesting. And I always say ignorance is bliss. I didn't know what it was like to have one, let alone 2. And, I didn't know the terrible 2s, 3s, 4s, and I certainly don't know this teenage world, but I'm getting a crash course in it as we speak. So I continue to say ignorance is bliss. What I don't know is coming. What's coming is a good thing. So.
It's funny because, obviously I lived through it. Well, now my daughter's living through it and she's got 2 teenage girls. And so it's really interesting as she comments, because I'm thinking to myself, yeah, I've been there, done that. I know exactly how you feel.
Yeah. So, and it's really interesting because, like my story I'd said, I thought I didn't know anything but busy back 9 years ago, but moving up here 14, 13 years ago, having those infant twins and an OB/GYN career and up every couple nights with, if it not my baby, somebody else's baby. So, that definitely would happen. And that mystery diagnosis that you read about just now was actually an adrenal fatigue is what we used to call it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And so it was really very interesting when I was in that conventional world. I was trained in it, and there's no such thing as an adrenal fatigue diagnosis in the conventional world.
Right.
So, what was really happening over those 2 years is I had all the symptoms. I just didn't look up on Google what it could be, other than, if I didn't have it in my medical textbook, it didn't exist. And the only cookie cutter diagnosis that I fit into was depression. And it was really interesting because I thought, yeah, it's got to be, right? What else could it be? But I remember thinking, and I never said this to my doctor, but I remember thinking, gosh, it just doesn't feel like what depression should feel like. Like I just feel like I should be much more sad. Like I should be crying all the time. That's not me. I just have all these other weird symptoms. And, you know, to her credit, she didn't know any better. I didn't know any better at that point in my life. So I just did what every woman out there would do that has these symptoms and don't know what else it could be, but wants to be fixed, is take that antidepressant. And so it wasn't until I tried the second one and failed again. Both the antidepressants didn't help my symptoms. They actually gave me a ton of side effects, is really when I went running for the high hills and said, that's not depression, you know, help, I need help. Who can help me? And, you know, this anti-aging doctor was actually a functional medicine doc. And, you know, when I got on the phone with her one evening, I didn't even know what functional medicine was. Holistic health, what is that? You know? But all I did know at that point, sitting in bed at 9 o'clock, talking to her on the phone, was no one was helping me any longer. Everyone had really given up on me as far as my medical colleagues. And I had no hope of ever feeling better. And so, before our conversation a few months prior, I actually had thought about no longer living. That's how bad it had gotten. And, you know, I felt like a deadbeat mom and, you know, not a great wife. And certainly I had no purpose in my career because I could no longer deliver babies or operate. So I would come home at night going, I'm not even changing women's lives anymore. I'm not delivering their babies or operating. And so that one fateful night that I got on the phone with this doctor, and, you know, within probably 10 minutes, she said, I don't think you have depression. I think you have adrenal fatigue. And I'm sitting there with a computer on my lap, Googling for all I'm worth. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is exactly me. This is how I feel. And there were so many thoughts that went through my head at that point of, how did I not know this? I've been practicing OBGYN for over 15 years. How did I not know this? And that was number one. Number two, how many other women are out there like me struggling with these weird symptoms that you can't put in a box, and there's something real going on with them, but we're made to feel like it's all in our head.
Right.
And, or we're going to have to live with it. So that one night, you know, between giving me the correct diagnosis, of course, we confirmed it with some testing, getting me sort of an outline of a plan. You know, I just felt like, oh my gosh, this woman gets me. She's helping me. And she's giving me my hope back that I'll actually live a normal life again. And right on the heels of that, this woman had never met me, this doctor, and she offered me a job in functional medicine. And where I live, there's not many docs like me. And her office is about 3.5 hours from where I live. And she wanted to put an office about 2.5 hours away from her, an hour away from me, more central to the state, to serve more patients. And I quickly got my computer out again, and I'm Googling functional medicine, and I'm like, oh, this is how I'm going to change lives. This is my next purpose. Because, you know, they don't teach in medical school what you can do aside from your you know, trained career, what you're trained in and working in a hospital. That's essentially how they're like, this is your career path. This is what you're going to do for the rest of your life. And what happens when you can't do that for the rest of your life? And I bought all the books of what else can I do, and work for, you know, be an expert witness, or work for an insurance company, or pharmaceutical sales, or malpractice. And I'm like, no, that is not going to get me out of bed in the morning. And this one night, you know, talking to her, and I'm like, this is it. This is how I'm going to go back to changing women's lives, because this is definitely changing my life.
Yeah. And I can so relate to that, because I went through several years ago adrenal fatigue myself. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it is one of those mystery illnesses. But, you know, I mean, I already knew about functional medicine doctors and alternatives. But here in the Tampa Bay area in Florida, we used to have one. We don't even have that now. And naturopathic doctors are not allowed to practice. Mm-hmm. So we're really limited on how we can get help in this area. So I'm just so thrilled when I find people like you who, you know, you're talking to this lady by phone. So there's ways of reaching out and finding that functional medicine help that you need without having it in your area. So I'm very thankful for functional medicine doctors.
Yeah, I am as well. I mean, it gave me my life back. And, you know, I'm here to serve all those women that aren't looking for that magic pill as a Band-Aid for their symptoms, that are really ready to look a little bit deeper as to what's going on. Because I know, when I got to the deep depths of burnout, like I had to get rock bottom in order for me to really make the changes that I needed to make. But not everyone's like me. And, part of my story is I didn't know better. I didn't know there was anything other than a magic pill. And of course it wasn't a magic pill for me because I didn't have the correct diagnosis. And again, I don't speak illy of my physician. She didn't know any better. And I was right there with her saying, I don't know what else it could be either. And so she was doing her best with what she had. And, now that I see her, years later after my training, she's a little more educated as well. But, and, to think that I didn't even know this whole world of functional medicine existed. That's what kind of, I don't even say haze I was in, but I was like, I had all I could do just to keep up with my family life, delivering the babies, and my board certification, what new drug is out and all those things. I really couldn't look outside the box of conventional medicine to see that there was anything other ways of healing people out there aside from the way I was trained. And it had crossed my path here or there, but I didn't have enough calmness in my life to ask questions. I was just kind of go, 150 miles per hour, just get through the day, get home to my kiddos, get through the night, fall into bed and get up and do it all over again. And, so it was really eye-opening, the fact that it had crossed my path at least a handful of times with women on what they call bioidentical hormones, that had to actually go to New York City to get them prescribed because, again, there was no one in my area that knew how to do that. And I remember thinking, gosh, I know a little bit about bioidentical hormones, the estradiol patches and such, but like what they were taking with creams compounded, when they started talking all about that, I'm like, oh, I have no idea what that is. And, they'd always want me to check their hormone levels. And I'm like, I don't know how to do that. All I know is to check if you are ovulating in case you want to get pregnant or if you're in menopause. Those are the only two times I ever check hormone levels. And other than that, I can't tell you how you're doing on your hormone cream. So I'll have to defer that to your doctor in the city, but I will do your exam to make sure everything is okay. So I always like to say that I was one of those semi-open-minded docs that didn't poo-poo whatever these doctors in New York City were doing, but I certainly didn't know enough about it maybe that was the point. I didn't know enough about it. I couldn't poo-poo, but I respected that they knew and they were doing a great job at what they were doing. And I was just going to do what I knew what to do, which is gynecological exams.
And I think that when it comes to women, when they get into midlife, whether they're in perimenopause or menopause, there are so few options for women out there. If you go to the doctor, well, you can go on HRT, and so many of us just didn't want that option. And it was like trying to find a needle in a haystack to get any advice on, well, how do I handle this? So I know that we talked before we got on about libido, and I think that libido kind of falls into that whole area of falling beneath the ways of getting help with a regular doctor. So if a woman comes to you, I don't know how straightforward a woman always is, that we kind of talk around the subject to an extent, but when a woman does come with what they might call low libido, how would you approach that with them?
Well, it really comes down to my evolution of studying libido. I mean, it's been 20 years and there's been a lot of things that I had a false belief about regarding women and libido. Number one was that, I was historically, I don't even say taught, but you're kind of conditioned to think it's due to testosterone, right? Because that's men, their main hormone is testosterone. So for the 4 years that I was actually in a brick and mortar functional medicine practice, 100% of the men that would come in, and that was probably 100% of the men that saw me, came in with a low libido, and 100% of them had a low testosterone level. And it was wonderful to be able to just replete it and watch them come back to life. That doesn't happen with women,
right?
And so I think, back in the day when I would have a woman in my gynecological office come in, I would really skirt the issue, because here's the reality of the situation. And it's becoming a little more talked about now, but back, when I started 20 years ago, 15 years ago, even 10 years ago, there's not studies. First of all, there's not many studies done on women, period. We are hard to control, especially when we cycle. And number two, when it comes to libido, there have been studies, and there still are studies of the magic pill for, this and that and the other thing. And they don't work except for that, whatever that condition is that they're being prescribed for. And so for women, it could be, again, it's not testosterone, like we did back in the day have one estrogen replacement that had testosterone in it. Ironically, it was never FDA approved. I only prescribed it maybe once, twice, and really never got the bang for my buck. Like I didn't actually help her. And as a matter of fact, it was an oral estrogen and testosterone, which we know could really harm the liver. So not only, and we're taught in OBGYN residency, don't give testosterone to women. So like, oh my gosh, so what am I supposed to do? I'm kind of conditioned to think it's from testosterone deficiency. But I can't give her testosterone. So what else do I do? And I think what happened is, also I started asking questions about libido when I'd have those 20-year-old women coming in, not on the birth control pill, which we know can interfere with libido, but even a woman on her 40s and in her 40s and 50s transitioning into menopause, a lot of docs will put them on the birth control pill. That is a number one libido buster. Like that will do it. And it really got me questioning, like these women, these 20-year-olds that are supposed to have wonderful hormone levels, including testosterone, why don't they have a healthy, libido? And I don't want to say healthy in a negative way. I think when I talk about low libido, if your desire for intimacy and connection is not where you want it to be, then it's low for you. And I've had women that say, I don't care about it at all. And if you're not bothered by it, it's not low for you. It's okay. It's completely normal. So I don't want to demonize or make it pathological as far as having a low libido. I'm here to talk about it for those women that have been conditioned to think that it's normal. It's normal as we age. It's normal after having kids. It's normal because of stress. It's not. And there's something else going on. And I always say low libido is just another symptom that there's something else going on. So if I have a woman coming to me, there's several areas that we look at. And quite honestly, repleting hormones is like icing on the cake if that is ultimately what is needed. I think I have also, even in my functional medicine early training, it was give every woman bioidentical hormone replacement. And while I do love bioidentical hormones, I don't think every woman necessarily always needs it, or I'm not going to force it on her if she doesn't feel comfortable. And that includes testosterone. So if we're talking about a low libido, and again, I've tried it. I've given testosterone cream to women with a low libido, and they come back, I have more muscle, but I don't have better desire. And so, and again, all these hormones are wonderful for each its own, if you need them, they're great. But being that magic bullet for a low libido is not necessarily truthful. And so, quite honestly, when I have to look at and I actually have this roadmap of where all the little areas that I look at in a woman, what is really foundational to everything is mindset. And I know no one thinks I'm going to come on and the doctor's going to talk about mindset, but I'm telling you, women, how we're conditioned from our younger years right on up, we carry that with us. And, a lot of times it can be as like deep as like not feeling worthy or not feeling like we're good enough and always having to prove ourselves. What does that do? Leads us to like usually burnout, right? Adrenal fatigue that we know can definitely lead to low libido. The other thing is how she feels in her body. Does she feel comfortable in her own skin? Does she feel comfortable, not having her clothes on in front of her partner? And, that is a big roadblock to even wanting to be intimate because she just doesn't want to be seen. A lot of women right now are covering themselves up with black clothes and baggy clothes, because they just don't like where they're at as far as their body. And, so that is a sort of uncovering like, okay, if that's how you feel, we can start working on that, so then we go down, the communication pathway. I've had women come to me, they say, I can't stand my partner, my husband. I'm like, okay, that's a big red flag. How are you going to want to be intimate if you can't stand them? But the other thing is, when I have women hop on the phone with me and they say, well, my partner comes in and he's been out of the house working all day and I've been in the house with the kids and trying to, lately juggling virtual schooling, or we just came out of that. But these women are trying to do all of their normal roles of potentially even being a business owner, trying to keep the house up, grocery shop and all the things. And then now they're virtual schooling kids. Their partner comes in and pops on the couch because they're tired and gets on their phone. And meanwhile, mama's over there making dinner, looking like she's got it all together. But meanwhile, she's really crumbling because she's exhausted. She's resentful. She's frustrated. She's angry because, there has been no offer to help. And here's a couple of things that I always say when it comes to this, because I can say a lot of this because it's been me. Like this has been me throughout. I have been that superwoman that thought she could do it better than anybody else. And, I was proud that I could juggle virtual schooling the kids and grocery shopping and making the meals and running a business. And I'm telling you, I fell into bed at night and I wore my superwoman, crown myself. No one gave me a trophy. I got bragging rights, and that's all I got, And so what I started to learn is that my husband is not going to know where to help me because I look like I have it all together. I really do. I've really put on a great front. But meanwhile, inside, I'm like resentful that I don't have time for myself, that I'm exhausted and all of the things. I just had to start communicating who can help me? I always call my 4Ds. Like, what do I have to do? What can I delegate to someone else? I have teenage kids. I have a husband. I have friends. What can I put off my list for a little bit that I don't need to get done right away? And what do I completely delete off my list? What doesn't have to be done? What is that unnecessary things that we do every day that we don't really have to do? And so, that communication is key. And I always say in the bedroom, but it starts outside the bedroom, because no woman is going to want to get intimate or connect with a partner if she is feeling angry, resentful, frustrated, and exhausted. And that really begins with saying what you need and not feeling like you have to do it all. It's not a failure to ask for help. And I think we have been so conditioned to think we have to do it all, and that any ask for help is just a sign of weakness or failure. And it's not. It's survival, especially lately, And then, of course, right on the heels of that, I always, I want to say 100% of my recent clients have had an underlying issue with burnout. And, and when we talk about burnout, adrenal dysfunction, APA dysfunction, whatever we want to call it, essentially the adrenals are not working optimally. And they're those little glands on top of your kidneys. They're small but mighty, and they produce our stress hormones. Namely, one that we talk about a lot is cortisol. And we know that when you're trying to pump out cortisol, you actually steal what they call the precursors. So things that you need to make other hormones, you steal it away from making those other hormones like testosterone and progesterone to make cortisol. And then eventually what happens is sometimes it's exactly how we were saying in the beginning, adrenal fatigue. Your little adrenal glands get tired of fighting that tiger 24/7. And we just don't make the cortisol in the appropriate amounts throughout the day, which ultimately can leave a woman pulling herself out of bed in the morning, dragging throughout the day, living on foods that aren't necessarily the best for the libido, like high sugar foods, caffeinated, a pot of coffee, those potato chips that look much more appealing than a salad. And, essentially beating herself up all day because she feels lazy, right? Like that's exactly how I felt. I was like, oh my gosh, I think I'm just lazy. No, I had burnout. I had adrenal fatigue. And, she falls into bed at night. She certainly is not going to want to be intimate. She could barely make it through her day. So those are the top three. It's always that I always begin with. And then we can layer in a lot of other things such as diet, nutrition. Again, we kind of go, when I said mindset's the foundational component here, like if a woman feels badly about her body and herself, a lot of times we do self-sabotaging behaviors such as eat foods that aren't the best for us because we think, what the heck, I can't lose this weight anyhow. I might as well eat the chips and eat the cake and eat the cookies. And once in a while, that's fine. I have no problem with that. But when we make that an all day, everyday thing, of course, we're perpetuating it, right? We're gaining the weight, and then we're continuing to beat ourselves up, feeling poorly about our bodies. And so it's this self-perpetuating thing that we ladies have going on, especially when it gets up in our heads. The way, again, we think about ourselves. And so the nutritional choices could also be from burnout. When I had my burnout, I'd open that fridge and I'd see the salad mix, but I'd quickly close it because I'm like, I'm too tired to make a salad. Even if it was just literally washing off the lettuce, throwing it in a bowl and putting some, oil and vinegar on it. It was too hard. And so I would just do an about face, walk over the cabinet, pull out a bag of potato chips and go lay back on the couch and eat those chips. And that certainly wasn't helping anything, especially my libido, my weight gain, all of it. So a lot of times, our nutrition can be affected by our stress levels, boredom. If we're procrastinating, we don't want to do something. A lot of times I'll have my clients like, yeah, so I get up and go down to the kitchen and get a snack. I'm like, do you have to get a rebounder if you're bored and just rebound and sit in your office as opposed to going down and grabbing that snack, especially if you're not hungry. If you're not hungry, we're just doing it out of either stress or boredom. So nutrition is definitely a big one that can affect libido. And again, they're all intertwined. So I feel like we start with foundational, and then we can start building on like some of these little caveats that are definitely offshoots of behaviors that we're adopting because of the underlying root cause. And again, when we talk hormones, definitely hormones come in when it comes to cortisol. Oxytocin is one of my favorite hormones. It's our love hormone. It's our hormone of connection. But think about it. What's happening over the 18 months, there's not a lot of connection going on, a lot of, we used to do date night in my house, my husband and I, to physically get out of the house and be able to just talk to one another. That hasn't happened. We don't go out for date nights. And so, that really trickles down to that alone time that you have with your partner and connecting. And I think a lot of couples over the past, 18, 20 months now have really taken that out, and they're really losing sight of who they're married to. They're not talking to them. It's always family dinners. The kids are always talking, about whatever. And then, there's no more hugging, which is a hugging, kissing, touching, laughing. It all will actually increase your oxytocin, which oxytocin's on a teeter-totter with cortisol. So when you are hugging, even just a hug, like when I talk libido, like just hugging, sometimes that's enough for women and a man. They just want to just hold hands, hug, maybe a little kiss, that will increase your oxytocin. And what that does with cortisol is it lowers cortisol. So again, oxytocin and cortisol in this little teeter-totter. You can't feel all lovey-lovey and have stress on board, it definitely goes down. So the biggest, stress reliever is go give your kid a hug even, give someone a hug, or make dinner with a loved one, laugh. Like that will definitely lower your stress levels, but definitely oxytocin's taken a hit over the pandemic. Obviously insulin, is our hormone that puts blood sugar away. But again, because of a lot of poor dietary habits that many have adopted over the past 18, 20 months, if not before, are really wreaking havoc on the insulin levels and ability for and subsequent hormone levels, but also the ability for women to lose weight. Because a lot of times when we're stressed, that cortisol dysfunction will actually lead to weight gain, especially in the midsection. The other thing, when I talk about hormones, that's kind of intertwined with that is estrogen dominance. And I love estrogen. It's what makes us women, it's so many, I don't want to demonize estrogen. The problem is when we have too much estrogen on board is really when we're not feeling so good. We're much more, irritable, moody, and, our breasts are tender and our periods are heavier and all the things. And a lot of women think that it's out of their control, but there are so many things in our environment that are actually leading to estrogen dominance. And so this is where toxins a lot of times come in. And, my two biggest takeaways for your audience listening today of like what they can do as far as toxins is fragrance products, ladies. Like if you have personal care products that you're using, women at a baseline, I want to say it's like on average, like 500 ingredients we put on our bodies a day. And I know you're probably thinking that I don't put 500 different products. No, one product can have like 30 ingredients. So, we talk about shampoo and conditioner and hair gel and face wash and face lotion and primer and like I can go on, and our lotion on our body and our anti-cellulite cream and our, all the things, it adds up. And so, how many of those things have a fragrance? Like everyone wants to smell pretty, right? But those fragrances come at a price because they're definitely disrupting our hormones. And the other thing that's easy to get rid of is plastics. And I say easy, when it comes to storage containers, glass, stainless steel can get kind of expensive if you try to do an overall all at once. I always say just kind of start weeding out little by little the plastics, especially storage containers. But if you have some that you are like, oh, I can't afford to like buy all glass, I would just recommend whatever food you have, just make sure that you cool it down before you put it in the plastic container, because hot beverages and food can actually leach the chemicals from the plastic into the food, and then you eat them and then they disrupt your hormones. So that goes for food containers as well as drink containers. So your fun little Starbucks cups with that plastic top on it, as you're drinking through it, just take the top off. Take your top off, not your top, the top of the coffee, but and then in the plastic water bottles, like in the summer, try not to keep them out in the hot car, for the environment too. Try to get rid of plastics as much as possible, get a reusable water bottle and fill it. So I think, for women, that's a lot of times huge impact of, just trying to sort of remove the fragrances from your personal care products, and cut down on plastics are two heavy hitters for women. And there's many more. And again, I love talking about toxins, and I don't love talking about it because it can be doom and gloom, but they definitely add up. When I have people approach me about this or that, and I'm like, well, if it's just one thing you're doing, it's your body can handle it. But it's when we are pouring on these toxins all day long, including in our food, that our body becomes unable to just handle that burden. And that's when we don't get rid of the toxins as well, and they start definitely disrupting our hormones. So toxins are definitely in there. And of course, the known, mood disorders. But again, I feel like that's something that's been on my radar forever: depression, anxiety. And unfortunately, a lot of times docs will, and some people definitely need medications, but that definitely gets in the way of your desire as well. And a lot of times, it's if you need it to get over that hump while you're working on a lot of the underlying reasons, such as gut health. Gut health is super important, and it's kind of infused throughout this whole thing. You can't have a good libido and healthy hormones and just overall good health without optimal gut health. So, definitely one of the first places we work on is the gut. So yeah, so it's a complex approach, but it's one that I feel like it's really hard to just dissect out. They're kind of all intertwined. And sometimes because we do one thing, it's out of a reaction to something else that's going on with us. And again, a lot of times women, it's just saying one thing to them. They're like, oh, yeah, that's exactly how I feel, and kind of get into why they feel a certain way, working on that. I'm certainly not a therapist or a counselor, but I'm a pretty good doc with a life coach kind of married together, that can help them figure that out.
So tell our audience where they can find you.
Oh gosh, I am all over social media at Dr. Renee Wellenstein. I am on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube. I have my own podcast, The Real Heal. And I also have a website, drreneewellenstein.com. So, and I work virtually. I work completely online now. After my office closed approximately 3.5 years ago, went all online, 100% online. So I can help anyone, anywhere with their libido and all the other things that come with that.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I appreciate all of your input today. That's a topic, as you say, that's not talked about very much, but a very complex subject for sure.
Yes, for sure.
So thank you so much. I appreciate all your wisdom and all of your help today.
Thank you for having me.
And maybe we'll get to do this later because it's a huge topic.
Huge. Yes. Do several episodes on this one topic.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.